Welcome to Performance Task Design, the prompt, Module 4B.
So now that you've had a chance to engage in some brainstorming, I've identified, what are the content standards and or the 4Cs that I want to evaluate, and what might be a student product or process that they could create that would allow me to measure their mastery of those outcomes. We're ready to really start kind of taking that brainstorming and putting it into tangible products that students can get. And so the first thing to really think about is, what is the prompt that I'm going to hand the students that really articulates what it is they're supposed to do as part of this performance task and what those parameters would be. And so an acronym that you can use to really help you write a fully developed, well-written prompt is GRASPS. And it comes from Jay McTighe's work. And so what GRASP stands for are, the G is for goal. And so what this is saying is that somewhere in the ultimate prompt that you write, again, you're thinking about like a short paragraph maybe that you would present to the students on a handout. Somewhere in that paragraph, you should describe what is the goal that the students are trying to achieve. What's the task or the role or the problem that they're trying to overcome? We want them to be very clear that this is what you're trying to accomplish in this particular task. You also want to make sure somewhere in your prompt that you identify their role. The R stands for role. So the student, what role are they assuming? So you could say things like, you are a blank, or you've been asked to blank, or your job is blank, right? You want them to understand kind of what is their unique part as the student in this scenario. The next letter, A, stands for the audience. So while it's important for the students to understand their role, it's equally important for them to understand who is the audience for whom they are designing or performing or creating something. So you could say things like, your client is blank, or the target audience is blank, or you need to convince so-and-so, right? When students have a particular audience in mind, it again increases both the authenticity of the task, but also their engagement in it, because it makes it more, it raises the stakes, it makes it more important. Even if that audience isn't a true real life audience, just having a simulated audience to think about is going to improve their design. The S stands for the situation. So your prompt should also help students understand the broader context, challenges, and circumstances around the scenario. What are the obstacles that are going to make it harder so that their goal isn't something they can immediately achieve? What are some design factors they're going to have to consider in putting together a comprehensive solution? The P actually stands for two things, both product or performance and purpose. So in other words, students need to know not just who they are, who they're designing for in the broad situation behind their goal, but what is it they're supposed to make or do, right? What is the thing that they're creating, and how does that purpose tie back to the overarching goal? So you'll create blank, or you'll develop blank in order to blank. And then finally, the last S in GRASP stands for success criteria. And while you certainly will have a scoring guide that specifically articulates how students are going to be scored, it's important to also generally reference in the task prompt, how are they going to be evaluated? What are the things they should be striving for so that they know that they've created a good product? And so when you put all of that together, not necessarily in that order, but any prompt should have all of those elements at play. And so let's again look at the example that I provided in the high overview. You would go back to your template at this point, and you would write that prompt in a cohesive, sort of synthesized manner, taking the kind of the notes you took from GRASP and putting it together in a way that makes sense, and that's also student friendly, so students will understand it since they're the audience here. So as I look through my prompt, you can see things like, you are a member of a 4-person business firm. That's the role, right, that the students will play. You've been hired by a wealthy client. That's their audience, to help her determine the best stocks to invest in on the stock market in order to make the most profit over the coming year, right? That's your goal, and it's also some of the success criteria. Using the Student Stock Trader app, your team will research 5 different self-selected companies on the stock market, create a graph that models the change in stock prices over the past 12 months, use the graph to give a 5-minute oral presentation. So all of that, right, with some of the context or the situation, as well as some of that success criteria again. The 5-minute oral presentation tells them what are they creating, that's the product. And again, the purpose is to advise their client of the stocks you'd research. So you can kind of see how it all comes together in a student-friendly package that you give the students so they know what to do.